order. Everyone must state their name and where they are from prior to the speaking. For example, John Smith, board member, Harry White, 123 Main Street, etc. Each time they speak. During the public delegations, Jennifer will open lines for comment. Please wait to be called on to speak. Once you have finished speaking, please mute your microphone or phone. During each agenda item, only the board, staff, and presenters will be unmuted to speak on that particular item. Only one person may speak at a time. If you want to speak, raise your hand and wait to be called upon. Board members will be called upon to provide comment via a roll call. Members and alternates for all motions, in the interest of making sure we have a clear record, please plan on roll call votes so the public and Brooke, taking minutes, can be very clear on the record. Only hosts are permitted to share screens at this time. Any documents to be shared must come through Jennifer at jlindo@townhall.com. As required by executive order, all documents being discussed and reviewed at the meeting must be posted on the town website no later than 24 hours prior to the meeting. This entire meeting is automatically recorded by Zoom, and upon the host logging out, the meeting will cease, and so will the recording. The meeting cannot continue without the host. At this time, I would like to ask for public delegations. It's a time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission on subject matters that are not on the agenda. Jen will now open lines for public comment. Please wait to be called upon to speak. Do we have any public delegations that are not on the agenda?
I don't think so. I've got Nicole on here, but I think that's Nicole Davison from the Planning Commission, who's just our liaison. So I don't have anybody who's, Nicole,
Okay.
are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
That is Nicole. Okay. Moving on, we will move on to item number 2, the public hearing. Please note that if you wish to speak during the public comment portion of the public hearing, you must send a message via the Zoom chat feature to Jennifer. She will maintain a list of speakers for public comment. Item number 1 on our agenda is the petition of Paz and Construction LLC to rezone 20.24 acres from an RU80, RU40. It is existing zoning designation to affordable housing district, and for approval of a preliminary site plan which proposes an 80-unit multifamily affordable residential housing development designated as, quote, Brookside Apartments, end quote, for property identified on the westerly side of North Bradbrook Road in East Lyme. East Lyme Assessor's Map 0.90, Lot 37-2, pursuant to the Connecticut General Statutes 830G. I'd like to make a note.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Peck.
Just for the record, I have to recuse myself from this application.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Seeing that Mr. Peck will recuse himself from this application, I would like to invite Ms. Denise to participate in this hearing. Denise, do you hear us?
I do. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I'm in.
At this time, I'd like to make a note of the following exhibits for the record, which are available on our website as well. Exhibit A, the application of Paz and Construction LLC for an 80-unit multifamily set-aside affordable housing development. Exhibit B, traffic assessment. C, management report. A water and sewer minutes of the August 27th, 2019. Affordability plan for the Brookside Apartments. Paz and construction plan set dated 9/25/19. Our legal ad, memo of Victor Benny, town engineer. Applicant responses to staff comments and revised site plan. a supplemental site plan of October 30th, 2020, and elevations for Building F. Presentation by the applicant, Mr. Heller. Feel free. You're muted, sir.
Nope, I unmuted
Ah,
him.
Oh, there you go.
I'm under the control of the host. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Harry Heller. I'm an attorney with an office at 736 Route 32 in Uncasville, and I'm representing the applicant Paz and Percent Construction. With me this evening in my office is Brandon Hanfield, the project engineer from Yannick River Consultants, who will also be presenting this evening, as well as Jason Pazzalia, the principal of Paz Construction, who is available to answer any questions the commission may have. Also on our development team are Peter Springsteel, the project architect, who is attending by Zoom, as well as Jim Barbaras, who is our traffic consultant, who has prepared the original traffic report from 2018 and the 2020 supplement, which is specific to this reduced scope project. As the legal notice indicated, the application which is before you for consideration this evening is an application submitted pursuant to the provisions of Section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes. Many towns are not familiar with the 830G process, but based on my knowledge of the town of East Lyme and discussions with Mr. Mulholland, I understand that your commission has administered a number of these applications and is familiar with the process. However, I would ask that you indulge me for a few minutes to just go over the parameters of 830G as I need to establish that for the record. 830G is the Affordable Housing Act that was enacted by the Connecticut legislature in response to a determination by a Blue Ribbon Commission that there was a severe lack of affordable housing in the state of Connecticut. Any municipality that does not have 10% of its housing stock that is considered affordable under the parameters defined in the regulations is required to receive and administer an affordable housing application. The affordable housing application under 830G supersedes the requirements of the underlying zoning regulations. The act requires in a set-aside development, which this application is, that 30% of the total number of units in the application be affordable units. And the affordable units are required to be the same size and have the same characteristics and amenities as the market rate units in the project. Half of those affordable units, or 15% of the total project, must be units which are available based upon the criteria set forth in the statute and the regulations to tenants who are at or below 60% of the lower of the municipality or state of Connecticut median income. And another 15% must be available for potential tenants who are between the 60% and the 80% of the lower of the municipality or the state of Connecticut median income. In the project that we are going to present to you this evening, we have three distinct unit types, as Peter Springsteel will explain when he presents the architectural plans for the project. We have 3-bedroom units, we have expanded 2-bedroom units, and we also have standard two-bedroom units. All of the proposed units are apartments and will be available for rent. So these are not condominiums. They are not intended for sale on the open market at this time. So we have to provide the 30% requirement in order to satisfy the parameters of 830G with respect to each unit type, the 3-bedroom, the expanded 2-bedroom, and the standard 2-bedroom. In order to do that, we are proposing 20 3-bedroom units in the project. So we will, in the application, provide for 6 units of the 3-bedroom style, type A, as they're described in the affordability plan, half of which 3 units will be available for people at the 60% or lower median income, and 3 of which will be available for people under the 80% of the median income. There will also be 20 expanded 2-bedroom unit floor plans. And again, we will provide 3 at the 60% or below median income and 3 at the 80% or below median income. And finally, we are proposing 40 units of the standard 2-bedroom design. And there will be 6 of those units designated for residents at 60% or below the median income and 6 at 80% or below the median income. So the total project is an 80-unit project, and 30% of that is the 24 units that we're proposing as affordable units. Now, on an affordable housing application under 830G, the applicant is not required to comply with the use requirements of the underlying zoning district. And the commission is required to approve the application unless the application fails to satisfy a 4-pronged test under the Affordable Housing Act. And the test is as follows. There must be sufficient evidence in the record to justify a denial. The decision made by the commission in denying an affordable housing application must be necessary to protect a substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters which the commission may legally consider, which means matters that are otherwise within the permitting parameters of a municipal zoning commission. The public interest that justifies a denial must clearly outweigh the strong preference in the state of Connecticut to promote affordable housing. And such public interest cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. Now, as the notice of the public hearing indicated, the proposal that is before you for consideration this evening has been submitted as a site plan application. We have not submitted a separate application for a zone change and zoning text amendment to accommodate this development. And I will submit to you that the plan that we're going to present this evening does not comply with the affordable housing regulations that your commission has adopted through its legislative authority and which are currently incorporated into your zoning regulations. And I would like to read to the commission a few excerpts from the case of Wisnowski versus the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Berlin, found at 37 Connecticut Appellate 303, which justifies the manner in which this application has been presented. On appeal, the commission claimed, and this is the Berlin Zoning Commission, that the trial court improperly concluded that 830G overrides both the requirement that an applicant seek a zone change prior to obtaining subdivision approval pursuant to General Statutes 826 if the development proposed does not comply with municipal zoning regulations and the uniformity requirement of General Statutes 8-2. And second, illegally usurp the legislative and administrative authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Berlin. The commission argues that the plain language of 830G indicates that it is an appeals act only, and therefore the fact that an appeal is brought under 830G should not affect the standards and law applicable at the administrative level of land use decisions regarding affordable housing. Further, the commission argues that the legislative history of 830G recognizes the need for a developer to comply with existing zoning or to seek zoning amendments to obtain approval for proposed developments. Thus, the commission's basic claim is that the trial court improperly concluded that 830G overrides the requirements of 8-26 dealing with subdivisions and 8-2 dealing with zoning. Our conclusion is that the plain and unambiguous language of 830G does not contemplate a denial of an affordable housing subdivision application on the ground that it does not comply with the underlying zoning of an area. General Statutes 830GC provides in pertinent part, upon an appeal, the burden shall be on the commission to approve, based upon the evidence in the record compiled before such commission, that the decision from which the appeal is taken and the reasons cited for such decision are supported by sufficient evidence in the record. The decision is necessary to protect substantial public interests in health, safety, or other matters, which the commission may legally consider. Such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. This burden of proof applies to every type of application filed with a commission in connection with an affordable housing proposal. This includes affordable housing subdivision applications filed with planning commissions. The case concludes, whichever zoning authority is asked to deal with an application, a zone change will necessarily be embodied in the application, either as to use or as to bulk, as is the case here. If no zone change were involved, there would be no need for an application for affordable housing. An application may not be rejected just because it involves a zone change. No formal zone change application is needed because the act is designed to allow circumvention of the usual exhaustion of zoning remedies and to provide prompt judicial review of a denial of an application. So that is the legal formulation for the basis in which this application is being presented to your commission for consideration. As indicated, the application involves a proposal to develop 80 affordable units on a 20.24 acre tract of land located on the westerly side of North Bride-Brook Road. Jen, are you going to turn the meeting over to me now to share screen?
Yes, you can share screen.
Okay. Okay. All right. Can everyone now see the colored board on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And this is sheet one of the site plan, which depicts the entire site, with north being to the top of the screen. The property which is proposed for development is on the west side of North Bride-Brook Road. It has two areas of frontage, both to the north of the Zalewski parcel and also to the south of the Zalewski parcel. The property extends westerly to its westerly boundary, which is the non-access line of Interstate 95. The property is bifurcated by a intermittent watercourse, which flows generally northerly to southerly through the property, with a delineated riparian wetland on either side of the watercourse. That is highlighted in blue on sheet 1 and is delineated by the wetland flagging that has been hung by the soil scientist and field located by the project surveyor. We also delineate on this sheet the limits of the 100-foot upland review area on either side of the watercourse as contained in the Town of East Lyme Inland Wetlands and Watercourses regulations. The proposal for development, which is before you for consideration this evening, contemplates development only on the easterly portion of the property, with no incursion proposed either into the upland review area, which is adjacent on both sides to the intermittent watercourse, or to the area of the property which is located westerly of that inland wetland and watercourse system. When we formulated the design for this project, or not this project, but an expanded project with 108 units had previously been before your Municipal Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission for consideration. That application was denied by the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission in the spring of 2020 and is currently on appeal in the Superior Court. The formulation which is before you for consideration this evening is a scaled down version, reducing the 108 units proposed in the formulation of the plan that was presented to the Wetlands Commission to the current 80 units which are proposed for consideration by your Zoning Commission. In formulating the design that you will consider this evening, specific parameters were developed for the design of this project. And as a result of the formulation of that design, we have not submitted a new application to your Municipal Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission. There is a drainage divide which runs through the property, again, from north to south, just outside the limits of the 100-foot upland review area. We charged the project engineer with formulating a design for this project that would not result in 1 square inch of soil or vegetation being disturbed within the drainage divide, which contributes to the wetland and watercourse system. So all of the development which is proposed on this plan is located in the drainage divide, which slopes easterly towards North Bride-Brook Road. Now, if you can see my arrow, I am showing the limits of an upland review area on the easterly side of North Bride-Brook Road. And there is a 100-foot offset from the closest wetland flag, which delineates a intermittent watercourse, which eventually drains to Bride Lake. Our stormwater from this project has been designed to accommodate a fairly sophisticated both stormwater management and stormwater treatment design. When we get to the more intricate design specifications, I'll have Brandon Hanfield explain the design parameters. But you will see in the area that I'm highlighting now, there is what is called an infiltration system with an isolator row, which is the most westerly row in that infiltration system. That system is designed to infiltrate stormwater collected through the closed drainage system throughout the project, all of which is introduced through catch basins and culverts to discharge to this infiltration system. To the east of the infiltration system is a stormwater quality and detention basin. There is a riprap stone berm that runs through this basin, again with a general north to south orientation that you'll see on the grading and drainage plans when we get to them, which separates the sediment forebay from the detention basin proper. If you have reviewed the stormwater calculations that were presented with the application, you will see that no water leaves this property in any design storm event, which is at or below the 10-year storm event. Now, the 2004 Water Quality Manual that has been promulgated by the State of Connecticut Department of Environmental Energy and Environmental Protection considers the first flush or 1 inch of water in any storm event to be that water which requires treatment in order to satisfy the water quality goals of the state of Connecticut. The 10-year storm event is a storm event which produces in excess of 4 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. So we have no water leaving this site in any storm event up to the 10-year storm event. When a storm event that exceeds the 10-year design storm or greater than 4+ inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period occurs, at that point, the capacity of the infiltration system has been exceeded, and the water level in the detention basin will rise to a level at which it will outlet from the detention basin through a outlet structure, which is a structure constructed within the basin. It is essentially a catch basin type system that stands in the detention basin and has orifices in it to meter water out at a controlled rate in order to ensure, number one, that the peak rate of discharge post-development does not exceed the peak rate of discharge from this site, which occurs in its natural state, and also designed so that at the end of the storm event, we have only 6 inches of standing water in the detention basin, and based on very conservative parameters that your municipal engineer asked us to evaluate, would fully drain in a matter of 36 hours. And again, I'll let Mr. Hanfield explain. We've actually done both deep test holes and permeability studies on the soils in this area, and he can go over those characteristics and why it will actually drain quicker than that. So that is the reason why it is our very strong opinion that this application does not involve any activities that are regulated under your municipal inland wetland and watercourse regulations, and no application has been filed with the municipal agency.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
My apologies for interrupting. This is Attorney Zamarka. Just have a quick question as to the wetland you delineated on the east side of Brydebrook Road.
Yes.
Is that the that's the green, sort of blue-green line, correct?
The blue-green, this line right here?
Yes.
That is the limit of the upland review area.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
so that's actually offset 100 feet from the nearest delineation of the actual water course.
Okay.
And we are about at the point of discharge from the cross culvert under North Bride Brook Road. We are about 150 feet from the limit of the wetland. So we're 50 feet outside of the upland review area.
Perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
I'll also mention that this is a relatively flat area. And if you look at the soil delineation contained on sheet 1 of the plan submittal with the application, the area of the stormwater infiltration and detention area is a haven soil, which is considered a well-drained soil. The area on the east side of North Bride Brook Road is a Hinckley soil, which is considered on the Soil Conservation Service study as an excessively drained soil. So in the unlikely event, in a storm that exceeds the 10-year storm event, where we do have discharge from the detention basin on the easterly side of North Bride Brook Road, because of the excessively well-drained nature of the soils on the east side, the likelihood of clean water outletting that outlet structure and ever reaching the wetland limit itself is highly remote. And even if it did reach it, because we are discharging clean water from this system, it would not have any impact on the wetland and water course on the east side of North Bride Brook Road. Now, the proposal that is before you this evening has been modified from the original submission back in July as a result of the receipt of review comments from your fire marshal, from your town engineer, and other consulting agencies. The main access to the site is on the north side of the Zalewski property, and comes in and then has secondary access to provide access to the individual dwelling units within the project. As a result of review comments, we have added an emergency access on the south side of the Zalewski property, which is now proposed to be a paved emergency access. So we will always have two ways of entering and exiting this property with emergency vehicles in order to access any unit within the project. The project is contemplated in 5 separate buildings, ranging from 4 units to 10 units in a building to accommodate the 80 proposed units in the affordable housing project. You'll notice the red line that sort of swoops into the property along the north boundary. That line is the sewer shed boundary in the town of East Lyme. And areas south of that red line are located within the sewer shed. Because the northerly portion of this site is outside of the sewer service area, we have been unable to locate units within that area. As the submittal information indicates, this project is proposed to be served by municipal water and municipal sewer. We have received an allocation of capacity for sewer service for this project from your municipal sewer and water commission. And that allocation was actually for the 108 units which were in the original formulation so it exceeds the amount of capacity that we need to service the 80 units that are in this formulation. Okay, I've now moved on to sheet 3 of the site development plan, which is the grading and drainage plan. And you can see that we have 2 proposed rain gardens in the northerly portion of the site, which have been incorporated into the design in order to capture some of the overland flow, which is flowing easterly off of steeper slopes on the westerly portion of the site in the direction of the project. This allows the project engineer to capture some of that runoff and infiltrate it back into the ground in order to help attain the 0 net increase in runoff as a result of the proposed development. At this point, I'm going to introduce Brandon Hanfield to ask him to review with the commission the specific design parameters that he has incorporated into this rather complex formulation that you see before you.
I'll switch.
Whatever you want. You want the biggest screen?
Oh, yeah, that will help.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Brandon Hanfield, professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut and owner of Yannick River Consultants. I think Attorney Heller did a pretty bang up job describing the drainage system, but I'll give a few more details on how we approach this project. The drainage area that flows easterly from this site is 8.13 acres under existing conditions. It's entirely wooded. Today, the proposed conditions drainage area is also 8.13 acres, and that confirms that our goal here was to use the easterly drainage area only and not go into the westerly area, which is 12.03 acres. In general, the site drains from north to south or northwest to southeast. And what we did was we built these buildings into the grade. So as you work your way westerly from North Bride Brook Road, the site goes up in elevation. So the buildings are basically built into grade. So the drive under garages and the living units are above. As you get to the next unit, the same thing occurs. So we were able to use the buildings as our grade breaks to minimize our disturbance and cuts and fills on the site. Our drainage followed suit. So what we wanted to do was minimize how much water or runoff from undisturbed areas gets into our system. We want to keep that water infiltrated as much as possible. So those rain gardens that you see at the northern corner pick up the biggest portion of our drainage area that are not going to be cleared or disturbed. So that all that area there drains to those rain gardens. And what we did is we incorporated a filter bed material into them that we would see in a low impact development scenario. So the bottom of those rain gardens is 18 inches of an engineered soil that consists of mulch, topsoil, and sand, again, to promote filtration and infiltration and try to minimize any water that does get into our collection system. In terms of the impervious areas, as you make your way to the south, we have about 3.3 acres of impervious surface. That includes the roads, the sidewalks, and the buildings themselves. All of those impervious surfaces are collected by an internal collection system consisting of catch basins and a pipe network. We did incorporate some deep sumps at the recommendation of your town engineer at critical locations where there's main intersections or before discharges to a secondary system. And those deeper sumps will allow, again, us to collect sediments and debris before it enters into our infiltration system. As we make our way down to the infiltration system, again, I think Attorney Heller did a very good job describing it. Just a few things to note, the volume of our infiltration system and detention bit system combined equal the volume of runoff that you would see from all of the impervious surfaces for a 50-year storm. So without any consideration of water leaving our site, the volume of those two areas can hold a 50-year storm event, which would be in excess of 7 inches of rain. So the first stage of that system, again, is the StormTech subsurface infiltration system. The isolator units are basically the same unit that are wrapped in 2 layers of filter fabric and geotextiles. As water enters that, it is filtered before it enters the rest of the infiltration system. One thing to note here is the soil conditions of where we placed our stormwater controls. We did 2 rounds of soil testing. One, I believe, in 2019, early 2019. At that time, we had a smaller piece of equipment. We got to about 7 feet in most of the pits and found what we basically loamy sands on top of sands and gravels. And as we made our way further west, we found loamy sands on top of medium to coarse sands. There is definitely a break in the soil characteristics once you reach about the rear line of the interior. So I'll use the cursor here. So as you make your way back, those soils were very consistent until we got to about, it's hard to see, but there's a stone wall right at about this location here. And that stone wall is pretty much the edge of what we would call good drainage soils to what we would call more difficult drainage soils. So we located our drainage in the area where we felt we would get the best infiltration and attenuation. In design of this system, the detention basin itself is about 4 to 5 feet into grade. And the 7-foot test pits that we initially conducted aren't necessarily deep enough to ensure that we're above seasonally high groundwater or ledge. So we came back with a bigger piece of equipment and dug test holes that were 9 to 10 feet deep. So we did a couple of holes, but one is test pit 7, right in about this location here, and test pit 8 in about this location here. We did hit groundwater in 7 at a depth of I believe 9.5 feet or 114 inches. And we saw signs of seasonally high groundwater at 102 inches, which is 8.5, 9 feet below grade. In test pit number 8, we did not hit groundwater to a depth of 9.5 feet, and we did not see any signs of seasonally high groundwater. So the bottom of our system, from what we can see based on soil testing, is at least 3 feet above seasonally high groundwater, if not more. And that's indicative of the slope change you see across the street and the excessively drained soils that you see across the street. So as groundwater makes its way east, the contours of that groundwater is also following the grade in a basically going down to Bride Lake. So in summary, well, back to soil testing for one bit. We did send out the samples of soil from 3 separate test pits at various depths. Most of it was in the sands and gravels. The tested permeability or hydraulic conductivity of that soil exceeded 50 feet per day. The National Resource Conservation Service's published maps estimate that these soils have a permeability of about 24 to 25 feet per day. So our test results were higher than the NRCS published data. In our analysis, we used a factor of safety based on the lower NRCS published rates. So for the infiltration system, which does not have topsoils or silts that can clog up the pores, we used a number of 12 feet per day, which is relatively conservative. It's half of what NRCS recommends or publishes, and 25% of the lowest tested rate we got. And the detention basin, we used a rate of 6 feet per day, which again is 25% of the NRCS rate and 15% or 10% of our tested rate. So using that, we get a very good infiltration rate, and that's how we were able to basically infiltrate and treat all water for the 10-year storm or less. From there, water meters out through the catch basin and into the town system as it would today. I think that basically covers the drainage system. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I have a
McPherson?
question.
George, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is the right property, but there's like a very large sewer pipe that comes out of the side of the hill and drains into a catch basin. Is that anywhere near your property?
Brandon? Or Jason?
It's not on our property.
It's not on our, Jason, why don't you make sure you introduce yourself for the record.
They might
Yeah.
not be able to hear me, might be muted.
Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Let's see if I can unmute you. What side of the property is that? North. See if I can do it.
Jason, you know the pipe I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
Now that I'm unmuted, Jason Pizzalia, 21 year.
Now you got an echo.
Okay, Jason,
Yeah, let's-
this isn't gonna work. Here, go to this computer. Mute him again.
Hang on. Jen's on it.
Okay.
I'm gonna switch shares here.
Again, for the record, Jason Pizzalia, 21 Darrow's Road. So yes, if you're driving down North Bridebrook Road to the north of our, here, can you see this anymore?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, that there's a green pipe that it's not located on property, on our
That's all I
property.
really needed to know.
Yeah, it's north of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, George. Mr. Heller, please.
Any other questions?
I believe we're good for now.
Okay, at this point, I would like to introduce Jim Barbaras, who is a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, who concentrates in traffic engineering, who prepared an initial study before we had an actual design of the property for 250 units, and then has recently prepared a supplement, which has been submitted into the record, evaluating the 80 units that are proposed in this application. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Jim.
Jim, are you there?
Did we lose Jim?
You can see him, but we can't hear him. He's not muted.
Mr. Barbaras, can you hear me? Raise your hand. Okay,
Yeah.
we cannot hear you.
Jim, there may be an internal mute button on your computer. Remember we had a problem with that before?
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of Zoom. Mr. Heller, is there something else you could work on if we try to get?
Yeah, well, let's let Jim try to figure this out. And before I introduce Mr. Springsteel, I just indicate that each of the proposed units in this project has a drive under garage. So we have 80 parking spaces in the garage and one additional parking space for each unit in the driveway leading up to the garage, with some additional areas for overflow and guest parking throughout various areas of the project, which I'm highlighting now. So we have 36 of those spaces. We have a total of 196 spaces within the total project. So with that, I'm going to go down to the architectural elevations and ask Peter Springsteel if he could review with the commission the architectural theme for this project and how it's been formulated.
Good evening. My name is Peter Springsteel. I'm a licensed architect in the state of Connecticut, and my office is in Mystic. As you can see from this 3D rendering, that the buildings are essentially 3 stories tall, and they're designed in such a way as townhouses, so there's a break between each unit vertically. Some of our sites are stepping uphill as we go right to left, and so we can break the architecture at these points here to offset the buildings to meet the elevations. In addition, this building here is set up on a more or less level grade. We have a couple of buildings that are set up this way, and then the rest of the buildings are set up into the grade. So if you go to the next slide there. So on the units that are built into the grade, you will basically have a retaining wall here instead of windows and doors out the back of the basement level of the unit. Your parking is beyond that in the back or in the front, really. And then this will be, these decks here will end up being more or less at grade. And then this grade will slope down on either side to the garage level entrance grade. The building's appearance are going to be New England, essentially, with gable roofs, clapboard siding. You have shutters, double hung windows with simulated divided lights, which you can see a little bit in this diagram here. And then we would have architectural shingles for the roofs. And generally what we do on the exposed bases, we use a different material or a different texture or color to break up the height of the building. So you can see that on the right-hand side there. And if we go back to the previous slide, you can see those breakups in the upper gable dormers and at the bases near the garages. So this is a 6-unit building, which we have a couple of on the project. And we have different unit types in this building. Some of them are these two bedrooms, some are 2-bedroom expanded, and then we have a 3-bedroom unit. I've blown up an example of a 2-bedroom expanded unit, which is this one here. We're calling this unit type B. We are going to be required to have some accessible units in the project, and we will be able to accommodate those by taking the back end of the garages and building out living facility, bedroom and bathroom facility on that lower level towards the back of the unit. We have two-car parking garages typically in these, entranceway at the garage level from both the garage and the exterior. Our mechanicals will be down there. And then we come up to a main living level, typically in all the units. It's very open to, we've got a kitchen and dining and living that opens up out to the decks that we were talking about, and a half bath. And then on the upper level, the 3rd floor, we have the bedrooms, an office in the expanded 2-bedroom, and then 2 bathrooms up there as well, and the laundry. And then if you move on to the exterior elevation views. So here you can see we've tried to articulate the facades here so that we break up what would otherwise be a very long structure into segments. And then both vertically and horizontally, we're breaking it up with material textures at the different levels. We've got a covered entranceway to announce where you enter the buildings, and that helps break up the ground plane as well. And generally speaking, the center group of units will have a bigger dormer on it to emphasize the center of the building. And then we've got some projected bays also to break up that third floor. Essentially, that's it. These are the side views. And the rear elevation. And again, on the rear, when we're built into the hillside, you're not going to have that bottom row of windows and doors. That'll be underground. So it'll appear as a two-story building from that side. And I think that's it.
Does anyone have any questions for Peter?
I have one. How many handicapped accessible units will there be total?
I believe there's got to be 4. I think there's 1 per 25 units. I could be wrong about that, but I believe there's 4.
Thank you.
I think there's 8, right? Hold on one second, because I can get you an answer on that from the affordability plan.
I have a question about the landscaping.
Okay, Brandon?
Sure.
Oh, will you have any kind of landscaping between the project and the house to the north on Bride Road? Or what kind of landscaping are you thinking about?
Good question. And again, Brandon Hanfield with Yannick River Consultants. I'm just gonna get back to a page that shows that. Let's see, here we go. All right. And your question was, I'm sorry, could you tell me the location again?
Oh, the house to the north, is there any kind of landscaping plan to kind of block it off or divide between the project and the yard to the north?
There is, and it appears they're not showing up well, but the label is there. I think my color kind of overtook the trees, but there are 20 arborvitae screening trees, and they're labeled here, spaced at 10 feet apart. So there will be a full screened buffer in addition to whatever's left or supplement what's there now.
Okay.
And the same goes for the southern boundary as well. All these are screening trees along the southern boundary.
Yeah. Mr. Mulholland.
I just want to add that we're still, staff is still reviewing this application, and as we, Terry and I discussed this earlier in the day, we're going to ask that the public hearing remain open because we still have additional staff comments to get into the record. And one of the issues that I'm going to want to talk about is the landscape plan, and at some point. So I think when we reconvene on the public hearing side, we'll have some better answers on the landscaping. One
Okay.
of the other things I want to talk about at some point is the lighting plan and the lumens plan. So in the future, we should have a little more detail on that to kind of address Ann's questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. And then just all the exhibits are online there. So if you want to take a quick glimpse at them, you're welcome to do so there as well.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the affordability plan. 3 of the type A units will be handicapped accessible, and 6 of the type B units will be handicapped accessible. So it'll be a
Wow.
total of 9.
That's good.
Thank you, Mr. Heller.
And since Mr. Mulholland mentioned it, I'd be remiss if I didn't have Brandon come back and give a quick review of the illumination plan that has been prepared for the project and which we submitted Monday into the record.
Okay. Sorry, it's tight here. Okay, again, for the record, Brandon Hanfield. We do have 25 pole-mounted area lights throughout the site. Basically, they are parallel with the main access drives and the secondary access drives. And if we were to zoom into this plan, you can see the LPs here, and they're spaced between 60 and 65 feet apart. They are 15-foot high tall poles, and they are an RAB or a ROB LED fixture, which is fully cut off and designed to only cast light onto the areas that we want them. What we've submitted is a lumens plan based on the selected fixture, which is a type 3 LED, which is basically an oval or a longer shape. They also have a type 2, which is even longer and shallower to try to keep light focused onto linear elements such as a road. So we did prepare a lumens plan based on the locations of all these lights and overlaid that on top of our current layout to ensure that we have adequate light for our roads, our walkways, and our parking areas, and also don't have light that trespasses onto adjacent properties. You will see in that lumens plan, and it's the limitation of the program I'm able to use, that there's a little bit of trespass in this location right here. And I apologize, I don't have the lumens plan loaded, but there is a little bit of light trespass in about the 0.2 to 0.1 foot candle, which is very low light. And that's a result of the limitations of the program I can use. And it's because I have to select type 3 fixtures or type 2 fixtures. And type 3 is desirable for this development. In this location along the main access drive, we would switch to a type 2 light, which again has a longer and shallower cast of light. And that will address any trespass in this location. So through the type of light alone, we'll be able to handle that. But in summary, we are able to get a very even coverage of light on our site. Everything is full cutoff without any horizontal or upward projection of light or glare. And what we'll do is work with the lighting supplier, and Rob does a very good job. And by Rob, I mean RAB or RAB. And they will provide a very detailed design of that light for us, and we'll reach out to get that done.
Thank you. Mr. Mulholland?
Yes, excuse me, Brandon, did you take into consideration the front door lights, any wall packs that we're gonna have on the buildings, any spotlights, those type of fixtures? I have not yet had a chance to look at the lumens plan, and I will certainly be sitting down with our town engineer just to take a run through, and I may have additional questions. I have found in some of these developments, we suddenly find all these wall packs on the buildings after a lumens plan has been approved, and now we're going back and chasing developers. And so I want to make sure we address that up front, and that it's understood that that's part of the lumens plan, because we want to ensure we know what we're getting. In addition, we want it to be safe for the people that are going to reside there, should this be approved.
Sure. No, it's a great question. Our lighting plan does not account for any building mounted lights. We don't anticipate any wall packs or floodlights. We don't have any areas that would warrant that. Where there will be wall mounted lights, they'll be residential based for the unit itself, and there'll be wall mounted sconces that are typical of a residential door or next to a typical single family house door. So it'll be a downlight that really only casts sufficient amount of light for their entrance stoop and their driveway area or their deck. So it's a very isolated area of light that would not typically contribute to what we'd look at for the site lighting. It wouldn't provide us with any lighting that would be usable for the pedestrian other than their driveway or their walkway.
So is it my understanding that you don't have the styles of these lights yet?
No, we did provide a detail on the plan. It is on a detail sheet. I believe it's on sheet number 8. So it's a 15-foot high pole mounted to a concrete base. And I submitted in the package. And again, I think, you know, as Mr. Mulholland reviews the package on which we submitted Tuesday, it shows the light, a photo of the light, the specifications of that light. And so it's a 4-inch square tube pole, and it's a very slender arm mounted fixture off the top of it that faces directly down. And the light itself is controlled by eyelids on each LED node. So no longer do we have shields that come down. Every LED will be focused to cast the light as we need it to be cast.
And building mounted lights?
We did not account for those, but we can provide.
So Brandon,
I do see that it was recommended to you from Victor Benny that you provide a style of the building mounted lights.
And we can certainly do that. It's just not, it's not part of the lighting analysis, but we can certainly provide that light.
typically what I've done with the building lighting at the entrances is I have overhangs. So I'll do recessed down lighting. So the impact will be very minimal, but I can provide that a cut sheet for those if you like.
That would be helpful. I'm assuming that you're going to have lighting over the garage door, in the front door, and at the rear of the building. And if there's a slider on these decks, I'm assuming there'll be a backlight for that as well. So essentially 3 forms of lighting per unit. Is that correct?
That's correct, Bill.
Thank you.
Brooke, that was Mr. Springsteel, just for the record. Okay. Mr. Heller, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. Again, for the record, Harry Heller. Have we had any luck with Mr. Barbaras?
Jim, can you hear us?
I don't think that was the problem. I think we can't hear him.
We can't hear him. That's the
I know
problem.
that. Jim, wave your hand and you are muted right now, according to your screen.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, so I'm on the phone. That's what's going on.
Okay.
All right, so should I start?
Yes.
Okay.
Have at it.
All right, here we go. Sorry about this. As Mr. Heller said, we had prepared 2 traffic studies for this, which are in your packet. The one back in 2018 evaluated 250 low-rise units such as this. And the one we've updated to the recent plan is dated October 30th, 2020. And that evaluates 80 low-rise units. And a low-rise units in terms of trip generation is anything like an apartment, a condo, a townhouse. They're all considered in the latest way that traffic engineers are dealing with this. They're considered the low-rise unit category. So as was mentioned, this development will have one driveway intersecting the west side of North Bride Brook Road, and it'll also have an emergency access, but the main access will be the North Drive as proposed on the plan on North Bride Brook Road. What we did back about 2-3 years ago, and we've confirmed that these are still valid volumes, is we measured the traffic volumes on the street itself over the course of a week to find out what kind of traffic volumes we have. And what we measured at that time was there was 700 to 1,300 vehicles per day traveling on a weekday, depending on which day of the week you looked at, and about 1,000 vehicles per day traveling on a Saturday or Sunday. Now, in traffic engineering terms, those are relatively low traffic volumes. We also, at the time when we did that, is we also measured speeds. It's posted for 25 miles an hour, but we measured speeds in the magnitude of the average speeds with 32 miles an hour, the 85th percentile speeds, which is typically our design speed, with 36 miles per hour. Again,
Excuse me, Mr. Mubaris?
yes.
I'd just like to let you know that we are hearing you kind of staticky. So if you could just like try to speak a little bit slowly and clearly, it would help
Okay.
us out, please.
Sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
All right. So did you get everything I said about speeds?
We heard quite a few, but it was a little bit staticky there. So
Okay.
go ahead and just
The
continue.
road is posted at 25 miles per hour. What we measured is the average speeds are somewhere in the magnitude of 32 miles an hour, and the 85th percentile speeds, which is typically the design speed that you base everything on, is 36 miles per hour. Those are pretty reasonable speeds for the quality of the road. The road is, as you know, a two-lane road, and it does have curves here and there, but it's a pretty good road, and it's sufficiently wide for the amount of traffic it carries. So we found that the roadway system itself is quite satisfactory. We also looked at the traffic crash experience, and at the current time, the traffic accidents are all accumulated and put on file by the University of Connecticut. It has a system called the Crash Depository System, and you can go in there and look at accident history for something like 5 to 6 years in the past up till now. And we did that for all of the road, all the way from its southern end, which is at Route 156 at West Main Street, all the way up to its northern end, which is up at Route 1 Boston Post Road. And in a 5-year period, there were only 8 accidents along the whole road. And for a 5-year period, that's a pretty good traffic crash experience. All except one of those traffic crashes were one-car accidents, and they involved somebody just driving off the road, obviously driving too fast or probably under the influence, and most of them were at night. But none of them were in the vicinity of where the site drive is proposed to be, where the site's supposed to be. What we estimate is these 80 low-rise units will generate in the magnitude of 37 to 45 trips per hour during the peaks. That is the commuter peaks in the morning and in the afternoon. And those peaks typically run between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning and 4 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And those volumes will be for those 4 periods, because it typically takes 2 hours in the morning for people to vacate, and depending on where their job site is, and 2 hours in the evening to come back, again, depending on how far away their work is. So for those 4 periods, we estimate 37 to 45 trips for each of those hours generated by this development. And a trip is defined as a one-way movement either to or from the site. And we estimate that as is the road itself now, the traffic is split about 50-50. 50% traveling northbound, 50% traveling southbound. We figure that would be the same with the trip-generated traffic. So what we would be adding is about 19 to 23 vehicles per hour in each direction, which is a very low traffic volume to be added by this development. That's about 1 new trip added to the system in each direction every 3 minutes. So the impact of this would be very minimal. And if you do a traffic operations analysis of the actual site drive, the level of service you would get is a level of service A. You can't do much better than that. So the street would remain at A, level of service A, which means very little delay in traveling through. And the movement in and out of the site would also be at a level of service A, which means you basically are moving in and out at will. And we had Brandon, the site engineer, he measured the sight lines at this development. And we found that we have 400 feet of sight line to the south from the proposed site drive location, which is good for 36 miles per hour, and 500 feet to the north, which is good for 45 miles per hour. So we have the ability to provide adequate sight distances for the proposed site drive location. So in summary, there should not be adverse impacts from this development from a traffic perspective. It'll be a very low traffic generator, generating only about 37 to 45 trips during the peak hours. And the peak hours is when it's going to generate the most. That's typically what happens with a residential development. It's usually during the commuter hours when people travel to and from work. There'll be excellent levels of service A at the proposed site drive. There'll be satisfactory sight lines available at the site drive. And the traffic crash experience for the entire length of the road is quite good at this time. And there's no reason to expect that this development will exacerbate that situation or have any impact on that. So that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Ann?
I'm just curious how it could not have an adverse impact when right now at rush hour, it can take up to 15 or 20 minutes to turn left out of Bridebrook onto Main Street, and in the summer as well, because I've tried it several times. So is anybody, I'm just throwing this out there, is anybody talking about adding a left turn lane or a stoplight down by the Lyme Tavern? Because I think it would just drive people crazy to add more traffic in if someone's trying to turn left.
Well,
question.
with all due respect to whatever the situation is down there at the current time, I understand it could get a little difficult at times because it's an uncivilized intersection. This development will be a relatively low generator. As I said, it will add one trip every 3 minutes during the peak hour. So you'd hardly even discern this traffic being added to the system. And I don't think it would be up to a development of this size at this location to make any improvements down at that intersection. And that intersection is under the control of the state. So if there are any concerns about that intersection, I respectfully submit that should be something that should be dealt with the state DOT, since this is a development that's making any difficulty over there. And like I said, I don't think this development is going to be adding that much traffic to the intersection to make it any more difficult than it is today.
Mr. Mulholland.
Could you elaborate on whether the state DOT requires any kind of review of this proposal? And whether you're required, have you talked to the Connecticut DOT about increased traffic on 156 from this development, or is there no requirement for it?
Quite frankly, there is no requirement. If this development was 100 units or more of residential units, it would then require a review by the Office of State Traffic Administration, which is OSTA. But since it's under those parameters and also isn't more than 200 parking spaces, it does not require a review, and it's not on a state system. It's not on a state system. It does not require a review by the state agencies.
Thank you.
Mr. Buveris, Terrence Donovan here. So you just said how many units does not require or does require a state review?
100 residential units or more.
All right, so the first study that you did of 250 units, would that
Yeah.
require?
The first study of 250 units, yes,
Yeah.
would require.
And so when you did that study, what did the state find?
I didn't go to the state then because the first study I did was in order to have a town review, which I don't think ever happened with that first development. And then since then, it's been downsized. So the current review is for 80 units. So we have not approached the state.
Okay,
with-
but
with any
is
of
it
this.
my understanding that, as Attorney Heller stated earlier in the meeting, that it's still litigation for more units to be proposed or possibly
I keep trying to get
in there. So
Well, if it gets
should
to the
that
point where that other development is approved, we would then initiate a state review, a state application. But
understood?
we wouldn't go there. We have to go. We have to come to you first.
Understood.
We have to
understood.
come to the municipality first. The state doesn't want to see us until we show that we actually have the town approval in hand. So until we get by you, we don't go the next step. And as I said, we're only looking at 80 units now. Okay, not the 100, not the 250 from the past. We're only looking at 80 units now. And until we get, and at this point, if we get an approval for 80, we still don't have to go to the state. Okay. If on the other hand, we got an approval for the ones that are over 100, we would then, the next step would be to go to the state.
Understood. Mr. Dwyer.
I use that road numerous times during the day, and it's practically empty. I just want to make that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Thank you, Jim. Mr. Heller.
Again, for the record, Harry Heller. The last thing that I would like to review with the commission is the affordability plan that we've submitted as a component of the application, which is a statutorily required component to develop a plan which complies with the parameters of Section 830G of the statutes and the regulations that have been promulgated under that statute. Based on the lower of the statewide or East Lyme median income for a family of 4, which is $94,500, we have formulated using the regulatory procedure starting on page 7 of the affordability plan, the calculation of the maximum rents that can be charged by the developer for residents at 60% or below the median income and 80% or below the median income, both for the 3-bedroom units and the 2-bedroom units. And the required calculations are somewhat different, and you can go through those in the affordability plan. But for a 3-bedroom unit for a family of 4, with a median income of 60% or lower of the 94.5, that would be an income, maximum income of $56,700 a year. The monthly rent, maximum monthly rent would be $1,117.50. For a 2-bedroom unit, it would be a maximum of $1,025.75. And for the 80% category, for the 3-bedroom unit, the 60% for the 2 was $1,025. For the 80% for the 3-bedroom would be $1,590. And for the 2-bedroom for the 80% would be $1,451. The affordability plan details how applications are processed, reporting requirements to your municipal zoning official to ensure compliance with the affordability plans, parameters for the construction of the units, and the covenants that have to go into each lease for an affordable housing unit. And those covenants must remain in effect for a period of 40 years. And the 40 years is determined on a unit by unit basis because this project is contemplated to be a phased development, to be developed in 3 phases. So the 40 years begins to run for each unit based on the first day of occupancy of that unit by a tenant. So the affordability plan complies with the requirements of the statute and the regulations that have been promulgated under that statute. And I want to stress that this is not low-income housing. It's not subsidized housing. This is workforce housing. A lot of your entry-level school teachers, policemen, firemen, and other municipal employees will fall into the category that would make them eligible for this type of housing. I have done a number of these projects throughout southeastern Connecticut. In my opinion, they've all been successful. They've been reasonably well received by the host municipalities, and I think they represent good development for the town. I believe there's a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I was just about to say, Mr. Dwyer.
These homes are supposed to be intermingled, the low rent. They're not to be in a specific place. Isn't that correct? That's part of the agreement.
I'm sorry,
I did, Mr. Dwyer, please speak a little bit softer.
Move away from the microphone too.
Try it again, Bill.
Low rent housing, rent-wise, they're to be intermingled among the homes and not in a specific area.
Oh, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Dwyer. The act requires that they be spread throughout the project. And if you look in the affordability.
I understand. I just wanted you to recognize it.
Yeah, and we've actually identified the units which will be affordable units, and they are evenly dispersed throughout the project.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Heller.
That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Mulholland indicated, we've had a lot of discussion over the past few days. We just submitted earlier this week responses to review comments that we had received from town staff. So I'm sure there's going to be some back and forth and some things we'll have to iron out. We're prepared to do that. And we would ask that you continue the public hearing to give us an opportunity to do that. So at least when we come back to you the next time, there shouldn't be any discussion about technical aspects of the project. We should have worked that all out with staff.
Thank you, Attorney Heller. I'd like to thank you for your presentation. And so the commission and everyone can get up on the information, the exhibits, and we can get the staff input. I'd like to leave this open till November 19th. Anyone have any issues with that?
No.
No?
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, I'd like to thank Denise for her sitting and welcome back Mr. Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Heller.
Sure. Good show.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on is approval of minutes of the October 15th, 2020 meeting. I did find something in the minutes. Page 9, Brooke. You have the date wrong. You have November 5th, 2020. It should state November 19th, 2020. It's on page 9 to continue the landmark meeting. Other than that amendment, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended on October 15th?
So moved.
Second.
George and Kim, thank you. Any old business? We have none. Any new business?
Wait a minute, we need to vote on it.
Oh,
We need to vote
yeah.
on
Thank
that.
you, George. I apologize.
You're running
Hey,
right through that
Hey,
meeting.
this was thrown at me, yes. I will go through a roll call for a vote. I approve. Mr. Dwyer,
Approve. Yes.
Kim. Kim, do you approve?
Oh, yes, I do.
Mr. Peck,
Yes.
Ann,
Approve.
and George?
Yep. I approve.
That's right, you were present there. And then Denise was there as well, so motion carries. All those, yeah, carrying on. Sorry, got messed up there, guys. Moving on to new business. Any business on the floor if there is any?
Yes, please.
Mr. Peck?
With the approval of the commission, I'd like to bring up a question on enforcement of some cut trees that we have tried to enforce in the past, and that enforcement has been ignored.
Are we talking Stop and Shop?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have no issue. Anybody have any issues with Mr. Peck's suggestion?
No,
Bring it.
no.
Bring
Mr.
it.
Peck?
Okay, about maybe 2 years ago,
At least.
we discovered that they cut down the pine trees that face I-95. I didn't cut them down, just trimmed them flat, just so we could see the buildings, which we were purposely trying to hide the rear end of a big retail building where trucks and garbage and so forth, and they're trying to keep the gateway to East Lyme a little nice. That was enforced with a promise. We let them alone, and we got a written promise from their attorney that this will never happen again. Well, last spring, I believe it was last spring, they were trimmed again, and I believe they were trimmed about a month ago. 2 times in 1 year. I think they're trying to kill them. So I am going to recommend that we enforce this to the maximum that the law will allow. This is absolute disregard by the owner.
Mr. Mulholland?
Mr. Peck and I have talked about this. Just for the record, for the commission, I sent a cease and desist order to the ownership, who contacted me, I think it was 2 days ago. I ordered the trees replaced at full size, those that had been cut, and was very pointed in my conversation with him, which he protested immensely. He did receive a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals to mount some signage on the back of the building, and he's trying to expose it. Well, his problem is that the zoning commission didn't give him a waiver to eliminate the buffer, and that buffer is mandatory. Norm is absolutely correct. So he's got his letter. He did call me, and I owe him now a follow-up conversation. And of course, I will be talking to town council about this issue, and I believe we've already sent him a copy of it. I'll have to check that. But we're working on it from my end, but it's good to know that the zoning commission will be backing that and want to be insistent that we ensure that this owner follows the letter of the law. And it's helpful for me to know that the commission's behind that.
What does a cease and desist actually do in this case?
It gives him 10 days to comply with my order, which is essentially replace them and stop cutting and trimming. Now, if he fails to do so, we have to litigate to enforce. The state statute 8-12 gives, I have to give him 10 days to comply. If he fails to comply, the enforcement is going to Superior Court, which our legal counsel will provide for. Prior to that, they typically send a letter to them, essentially demanding that they comply with the zoning officer's letter. so they got additional notice. So when we go to court, I have a complete file from the last couple of years in which we would share with the judge. Now, I will note that the courts are closed right now, and I think Mr. Walker could comment on that piece of it. So that trying to get hard enforcement through the courts is difficult at this time because of the pandemic. It's my understanding that they may be backlogged 8 to 10 months. But it doesn't mean we should stop sending letters and enforcing. So I have sent that out, already taken action on that, already discussed it with the owner. And I concur with Norm's view that we apparently have been ignored, and I feel that they don't feel that there's going to be any real penalty. So my next step is to have a conversation with our legal counsel, and we'll go from there and see if we need to have follow-up. So I appreciate Norm bringing that up. It's helpful to me.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Anyone else have any comments on that issue?
Mr. Chairman,
Ann?
I think Mr. Dwyer has brought this up before, but I'd like, before the next election, I'd like to bring up limiting political signs to 1 month before the election. I mean, this year people have driven through people's yards to drive over them. They've stolen them. They've defaced them. Who needs 2 months of that? I think it should be limited.
Ann, was that you driving through my yard on my side? An admission of guilt. Ah!
Okay, thank you, Ann.
But I mean, like, can we put this on the agenda at some point?
Personally, I don't have an issue with them. This year has been a tough year for everybody. I mean, for the most part, everybody is fairly respectable in normal years. Do people get carried away with the signs? By all means. But for the most part, can we do anything? I don't know. I know other towns have certain areas to where they allow them and they don't. And you go through their towns this year and they were everywhere. So this year was sort of not normal, as you may say. So, I mean, but it is up to the commission on what they choose to do. Myself, I have no issue with them.
I thought I saw a Dwyer sign still up from 2 years ago.
Isn't that 32 square feet and moving in the back of a pickup truck at speed on 95? Vote Dwyer.
Yeah, that's funny.
I warned you, I don't care.
Yep. Mr. Mulholland, moving on.
I don't have a lot, but we are extremely busy here in the office. I think one day last week I signed 59 permit applications in one morning. We are that busy. With everybody home with the pandemic, people are making improvements to their homes, and ranging from new windows, replacement windows, to roofing, to additions and major additions. And as you know, as a commission, we have a lot of work coming before us. I've got a lot of interest in downtown. We're talking to a couple of new restaurants that may come up. One is already performing work. Smarties building was gutted. There is nothing left of the restaurant. Totally gutted. The owner wants to put in apartments. However, because it's legal pre-existing non-conforming, he can't do that. He can use it for a restaurant or possibly office and retail. So we're working with him and listening. So there's a lot of activity, a lot going on. We're flat out, and the entire staff is flat out. There's just, you know, with everybody home, a lot of demands on everybody's time. So we're doing what we can, and I think the commission knows you've still got quite a bit of work right up and through the 12-3 meeting. So we'll have another affordable housing application on 12-3. It's a redo, but nonetheless, it's going to be just a very typical affordable housing application. So we got a little bit of work to do. So with that
Thank
said,
you, Mr. Mulholland.
I have nothing more.
What is that?
It's Mr. Dwyer. Can you mute yourself for me?
He growling again?
Mute. All right, we do not have our ex officio. Zoning Board Liaison, next is Ann, November 10th. I do believe, and then Mr. Walker. Comments from the acting chairman. This was thrown upon me about 10 minutes before the meeting.
Nice
I
job.
apologize for my blunder. I do like to wish the best towards Matt. Hopefully he'll get better quick. And moving on from there, thanks everybody for coming. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Mr. Dwyer,
moved. Or second.
thank you, everybody. See you next time.
Oh, you need to vote again.
Oh, dang it. Sorry. I vote yay. Mr. Dwyer,
Yes, yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Mr. Peck,
Yep.
Mr. Excuse me, Miss Thurlow,
Yes.
Mr. McPherson.
Yes,
Thanks for the reminder. Meeting adjourned.
no problem.
Hey,
Very good.
everybody stay safe.
I'm out of here.
Bye.
Aye.